And here we are, the WWBA World Championship, just in the books. Todd Gold, Frankie Polari, pinch hitting for David Ronsley here in Jupiter, Florida, where the Evo Shield Canes just became the first team to ever repeat and go back-to-back at the WWBA World Championship. And Frankie, these two teams, it was a fitting matchup in the championship game. They met in the semifinals last year. Evo Shield had obviously one of the best years in travel ball history last year. The Scorpions had a very strong run themselves, and so it's fitting that they meet here again this year.
Yeah, few times does it actually work out where I think the experts like ourselves would actually be right, but I think this is what a lot of people would have predicted, and it's nice to see two titans go at it, and this is kind of what this was.
And obviously the Orlando Scorpions, the Mets scout team, the name they're playing under here, they had an epic semifinal matchup. They faced GBG, Marucci. Game went 10 innings long, 1-0. They took the lead finally in the top of the 10th inning on an RBI double by Brendan Rodgers. And coming into the championship game, that seemed to be kind of an advantage for the Evo Shield Canes, who kind of boasted the depth that was kind of the separator for them here at the end, whereas the Scorpions kind of came in, you know, a little bit depleted, a little bit worn down from that game that they had to endure against GBG.
Yeah, you can kind of see it coming into the ballpark. The Canes were able to come off their bus nice and relaxed and rested, and they had all that pitching that they could go to and tap into. Whereas, like you said, the Scorpions, the Mets scout team, had to work harder to get here. They played some great games to get here, but you have to wonder if that played a part a little bit.
Absolutely. And of course, they also played an extra innings game last night, too, just to get to the semifinals. So a tough run for the Orlando Scorpions and an impressive one. But getting back to that Evo Shield Canes pitching, let's talk about today's starter. Obviously, a guy that has been on the radar a little bit, but kind of took a step forward today.
Yeah, Dakota Chalmers, we've seen him before, like you said, but this event in general is probably the best we've seen him. In fact, it's definitely the best we've seen him. Up to 94 miles an hour very consistently, gets downhill with his fastball, showed two variations of a breaking ball today, both above average looking pitches. And, you know, that's a tough guy to come out and face, not a guy you expect to have in reserve in a championship game. For them to be able to run him out there is just a huge advantage, and that's why they're so good.
Yeah, and sure, in that bullpen, you know, the depth, as we've been mentioning, to have a guy like Evan Sperling able to come in out of the bullpen, you know, 90 to 92 plus extension, a lot of sinking life on the fastball, really effective there, kind of helped them hold that big lead that they had there in the late innings. And you can also look at the semifinal game. They had their All-American Ash Russell, their ace on the mound, and he wasn't his sharpest game, didn't follow up with his opening night performance with the kind that he'd hoped for, but they were able to go to Logan Allen, the strike-throwing left-hander, who was able to pitch them to a victory against Palm Beach Pal and get them into this championship game. The Orlando Scorpions have plenty of depth themselves, but when you compare it to the Evo Shield Canes, it's one of the deepest teams we've ever seen at this tournament.
Yeah, and it's very two contrasting teams in a lot of ways. Obviously, the Scorpions have tremendous pitching as well, but I think most people think of them, you think of that lineup that the Scorpions have. Carlos Cortez is sort of a new name we've seen emerge. We've known about Brendan Rodgers for what feels like forever, and now he does the same thing, tournament in and tournament out, and Kep Brown, and the list just keeps going on and on. And
Nick Plummer, of course.
Absolutely, Nick Plummer. I mean, the list keeps growing, and that's what made this fun. This was pitching versus hitting. Obviously, both teams very balanced, but fun names that we're going to be looking forward to seeing for the next year and years down the road.
And speaking of names, we talked about Brendan Rodgers, and we can't get out of here without discussing it. This is obviously a big event for the MLB draft. A lot of guys can really make a name for themselves in that draft, boost their stock. Let's talk about Brendan Rodgers' stock. What did he do here?
The defense was outstanding, like we talked about yesterday. He makes all the plays, and he makes the spectacular plays. And even when he's not at his absolute best at the plate, he can still hurt you. The hands work so well. He stays back on the ball, and we expect him to put on a show every time, so the expectations are high, but he still manages to live up to those.
Yeah, and of course, performance-wise, had the game-winning RBI in two playoff games to get to the championship. You're talking about a guy with plus bat speed, plus raw power, plus arm, plus glove at shortstop. This guy has the profile that you don't see too often.
Yeah, that's a lot of pluses, and like you said, we don't see that too often. We don't throw that around too often, but this guy's going to be special, and it was kind of a pleasure to see that this week.
And certainly had a performance that was worthy of MVP consideration. Didn't get the award ultimately. That went to the catcher, Brad Debo, 2016 grad for the Evo Shield Canes, had a big showing here in this championship game.
Yeah, put the bat on the ball consistently, drove the ball, and you know, against really good pitching, and that's kind of what it comes down to in these games when we're picking these most valuable player or most valuable pitcher awards. Is kind of what did you do again in the big matchups, and he came out and performed in those big matchups.
4 RBIs, a run scored in a 7-2 ball game makes a big difference for the Evo Shield Canes. And the MVP pitcher Tyler Holton, a left-hander, Florida State commit, you know, doesn't light up the radar gun, but can really pitch 3 pitches, and he was the MVP pitcher.
Yeah, like you said, two-way player, doesn't light it up, but really knows how to pitch. And, you know, came out there, did that. He's not going to hurt himself, not going to walk guys, and he's going to stay off the fat part of the bat and change speeds.
And that will do it for us here in Jupiter, Florida. Unbelievable run by both of these teams. The Evo Shield Canes are the defending champions in Jupiter.
Let's go, baby. That's what it's all about, baby.